Hello everybody and welcome back to the next tutorial. I am Rob and today we are going to be painting some Emperor's Children. Now I've gone for an Emperor's Children jet bike. I thought that all the metallic elements would look great against this hot pink, this magenta colour that we're doing. And we've gone for a later era Emperor's Children scheme, or at least what I think would represent a later era scheme. This is going to really pop off the table if you choose to do this scheme, and actually it's relatively straightforward. There weren't that many colours within this tutorial, so it's great if you're looking to do a later kind of more chaotic Emperor's Children scheme. So for the face I did a white primer, but for the rest of the actual jet bike itself I did a black primer, and we're going to start with Diabolic Plum. What a great colour. So this needs about 3 thin coats to get to this kind of level, and when it goes, it will dry a little bit darker, I found, than when you're putting it on. So you can see here the colour that's on at the moment, the dried element, is obviously significantly darker than what's going down. So I think it's just being mindful of that, that it will dry a lot darker over a black base coat. You could, if you wanted to, use a white pre-shade, but I don't think it's necessary. So we're going to use Diabolic Plum and Wicked Pink, and we're going to mix those two together. And we're going to use this as our mid-tone. So what I wanted to do with this particular scheme is kind of not faff around with loads of different colours, but I am making a mix here. So the Diabolic Plum comes from the magenta range, so that the Army Painter Fanatic magenta range, but I've mixed in Wicked Pink, which is from their pinks. But you could probably come up with some equivalent colours, but I just wanted to try out these colours. These are ones that I've not really tried before, so I thought this would be a great opportunity. So what you can see me doing here is hitting the kind of like the mid-tone areas. Now I don't need to worry too much about how I would highlight kind of, or how you've seen me highlight tanks like we did in the Sons of Horus tutorial. That was a bit of a back to front highlight. This one, I'm just basically assuming that the band of light is going down the center, and then just highlighting the actual body, the shoulders, etc., kind of highlighting all those as the light hits them. And then we're going to go to Wicked Pink. Now this is it's an absolutely amazing color, but it is a pink, right? So if you do not want your Emperor's Children a pink color, or your top highlight to be a pink color, then I would avoid this. But I just think that the color here would just look amazing on like rhinos and Sakarans, tanks, even your infantry. I think this is going to look absolutely amazing, but I really think that a colour like this for Emperor's Children will just really pop off the table. And that's often when I'm painting things, I'm often thinking about, okay, well, what's going to look good in a crappy kind of like hall lighting scenario? We play in these school halls or whatever, and the lighting is always the best in there. So it's about kind of making your colours be as vibrant and pop as much as possible. Next up, we're going to use Hive Dweller Purple. We're going to use this straight through the airbrush. You don't need to thin this. And what I'm just doing is, just where I've gone a little bit over the top with the highlight color, where there's been a bit of overspray, I'm just spraying this into the shadows, just gently. And what this does, number one, it creates some shadows. It's obviously creating more of a dynamic model, because we've got kind of very dark shadows now against a very top pink highlight. Adds contrast as well to the actual model itself. And of course, when we are thinking about models for the tabletop, it's really important to have these kind of like dynamic highlights. It just makes the whole model and the whole army just look more interesting. Not necessarily, the most realistic in the world, but it makes it look way more dynamic, way more interesting. So really pop the contrast, and this is a good way to do it. Work in reverse. So go to your highlights, and then if you need to shade it down with inks or speed paints, you can do that. And you can do this trick with lots of different colours. So we're going to use Impish Rogue next. So this is basically the next pink colour up from Wicked Pink, and I think it's great as just a highlight. So you're not, what I liked about this was that you weren't faffing around with kind of like mixing an off-white colour into your Wicked Pink. It's just the next one up, and in terms of a scheme to follow, this is actually fairly straightforward. We've now used four 4 colours in total, 4 paints in total, and then just go around and give it just a bit of an edge highlight here and there. We will do some battle damage over the top, and of course you don't have to do edge highlights, but it will just make your whole model just pop. So I went for a black shoulder pad and some black accent colours. You don't necessarily, you could do yours in white if you wanted to. I just went for a late Heresy, and I thought black would look good against these pinks and these magentas as well. But it's totally up to you. White or black will work just as well. It just depends on the whole vibe of your force. And then I just edge highlighted it with Thunderous Blue, which is just a nice edge highlight for black. Particularly, it's not, you know, like a neutral grey. It's got blues in it, so it's nice, particularly for Emperor's Children. I then glossed the entire model. And there's lots of ways you can do that. You can do that with a rattle can. I did this through the airbrush, and then you can apply your transfers using microset and microsew. We've done lots of videos on that before, so I won't go through it in detail now. But if you're not sure, then have a look at some of my previous videos where I've talked about it more in depth. Then we're going to add a little bit of battle damage just with some sponge. Nothing more complicated than that. So on the black shoulder pad on the eagle, what I've done is just chipped it with some black paint, the same matte black paint that we used to actually paint it on. And then I've used Impish Rogue as this kind of like initial chipping colour, just to create some kind of like scratches where the black paint has started to chip away as well on the actual speed on the jet bike. And then I've used oak brown mixed in with a little bit of black just for that kind of armored ceramite colour underneath. I haven't done and won't do any kind of like streaking on this, but you could do, you know, streaks coming down from where you've done some battle damage as well. I've then glossed the model entirely again, so it's ready for oils. Now this oil wash is a mix of purple, probably about 3 or 4 parts purple to 1 part black, and then I have pin washed the entire model. Now it's been glossed again. Now the gloss being laid down will help the capillary action of the oil. So basically all that means it will just run into all those recesses. I find that if you mix in a little bit of violet or purple oil into the black wash, that it's less harsh than the black. I think that often just using black on its own can sometimes knock the colour back a little bit too much, whereas the pop of this hot pink colour is really important, and it was important to me that we keep it. So yeah, adding mainly violet to a little bit of black helped to pin wash the entire model, but also maintain the luster of the colour. And I would recommend that you kind of you do that as well, but it does depend on your kind of like your basing for your particular model, because it might be you want to use something more dusty. So once that's all cleaned up, I then give it a matte varnish, and then we're going to go straight into our metallic work. So what I've done is I've used a mixture, a little bit of rough iron, I would say probably 1/4 or 1 part rough iron to 4 parts bright gold. Now the bright gold is a really yellow gold, perfect for Emperor's Children. You know, we've got a yellow against the kind of those purple pinks within the armor, so they're going to contrast against each other really, really nicely. But rough iron is quite a strong, robust color, so you only need a little bit of it. And then we're going to go straight in once we've kind of base coated all our metallics with our bright gold, and we just do a really rough highlight with the bright gold. You know, you can think about where the highlight is on the actual armor itself and then kind of match those together. But you can keep this highlight pretty rough, in my opinion. And we'll wash it and then further refine it a little bit later. But yeah, just go around, just give it a general rough highlight. We're going to use dark skin shade for our wash here. This will knock back the metallics a fair amount, but it's a nice kind of brownish purple wash that works really well for any yellow golds that you've got. You know, I think it's always a good idea to have a browny purple wash with any kind of golds, because they just contrast together so nicely. So thinking about the color wheel, yellows, purples, they contrast together. So using a purple wash always works really, really well for your golds. So we go around the entire model. and then we just wash this all over. There's nothing too exciting about this this at all. These are the new washes. This one has become a particular favourite of mine. I think you probably saw it in the last video that I did when I was washing golds as well. So it's quite versatile, even though it suggests it should be used for sort of dark skin shades. For metallics, I found that it works particularly well. I did matte varnish this before I put all the metallics down. You could use a satin varnish as well, which would add real luster to the color, and you might kind of prefer that polished look to the armor. I've gone for matte. Number one, because it's easier to film and photograph, and for you guys to see, but it just depends on the way in which you like your finishes. So once the wash has completely dried, I just left this over about 30-40 minutes while I had lunch. Then I've just mixed bright gold with a little bit of Mithril Silver, and then just going around doing a little bit of careful edge highlighting on this. So I have been, and you can see me here being a little bit more refined than I would usually be with my metallic colours. It's the Emperor's Children, and the metallics are going to be a really important part of any Emperor's Children model you do. So I think it's worth spending a little bit of time on these parts. So we're going to use death metal and plate mail metal mixed together. Just a tiny little bit of death metal. I almost wanted like an oily sheen to this metallic. I didn't want it just to be pure silver. I thought that would be a little bit boring. So just adding in a little bit of death metal, I thought just mix it up a little bit. Now, as you can see here, going over this hot pink, you can see just a little bit of the pink underneath it. I'm using hot pink and magenta interchangeably as well as purple. So I'm just, whichever one I say, I'm just going to go with that. But you will need about 2 thin coats and just base coat all the metallics. So we're going to use dark blue tone, and then we're going to use, bizarrely, some oil stains as well. And again, this is just me trying things out. So I'm actually using kind of mainly dark blue tone as a wash, and then just mixing in with a little bit of oil stains. I kind of wanted like an oily wash for the metallics, but I also wanted it to kind of, the blues in there to reflect the sky above. And it kind of came with this kind of cool bluey oily wash, really. Like, it dried, it didn't dry glossy at all, and if you wanted it to be more glossy in terms of like an actual oil stains, then you could always add a little bit of gloss varnish in. But actually, as a simple wash for your metallics, you could definitely kind of give this a go. It's quite gloopy, so just be careful it doesn't gloop in parts and then dries, and then it looks a little bit unsightly. You want to avoid that. But you can see here the kind of like the color that it's created. I was like, oh, that actually works quite well. This works really nicely. And then we're just dry brushing with Mithril Silver, just using a makeup brush here. It's a relatively kind of smallish makeup brush. Just want to try and avoid hitting any of the magenta, purple, hot pink parts. And you can always, during this part, just hit those tippity top highlights of your golds as well, just to kind of really emphasize the shine on them. But go round to just give the entire kind of all the silver bits just a dry brush, and that's it. That's all we'll do for the silvers. We won't do any more than this. Just keep it super simple. We don't need to. We spent a long time on the golds doing the purple armor. This is fine. Right, next up, we're going to do a heat bloom effect. Really simple, this one. We're just going to use red and purple. You've seen me use browns and purples before. I just thought I'd do a little bit of something different. I think on reflection, if I was to do this again, I would do browns and purples though, rather than reds and purples. I think that it was just, I had too many tones of reds within the actual armor that I didn't need more red on the engine exhaust. It looks fine. It looks pretty cool. Different way to do it, and it's a different way for you guys to see kind of like a heat bloom. I think it would look cool on las cannons, but you just got a whole lot of reds going on in that palette, right? You just think about the different tones and colors you got going on, and I think just a brown and then a purple would look better in my opinion. But I wasn't going to go back and repaint it. This looks absolutely fine, still looks pretty cool, and hopefully you guys like it, and just gives you a different idea about how to do a kind of like a heat bloom. So I just used a textured paint, and then use various browns. So this one was bootstrap brown as a base, and then I just built it up through paratrooper tan and then khaki, and I just literally dry brushed it over the base. Really nothing fancy at all, you know, just dry brushing over a texture paint, and then I shall use some grass tufts on top of that. I think it's always difficult with Emperor's Children what kind of bases you do. You know, like a desert base might seem the most obvious because it's kind of like it got yellowy tones to it, but I actually think they probably suit something a little bit more neutral. So think about kind of browns and green tufts, I think would probably be best for Emperor's Children, just because you've got so much going on with the colour on that armour. But, you know, if you want to use... I would never use greys. I always think greys is a little bit boring. So definitely, I think, just go for some sort of basic basing material and go for kind of browns, I think, and some greenish tufts. And I think you'll probably... it will look pretty cool. But completely up to you which one you want to do. You know, it's entirely down to preference here. So these are the Highland tufts from Army Painter. These are some of my go-to tufts, really, and could be used with any basing from desert to you know, woodlands. They just like a catch-all tuft, and they come in 3 different sizes on the kind of like in one pack, so it gives you good variety. And then finally, we have our finished jet bike, and this is what it looks like. And I just did the head. I will do a head tutorial at some point in the future. I'm still working out how best to go about doing it. Just one of the bare heads from the Forge World kit, and then this is what it looks. So you can imagine this as a whole army on the tabletop, and I think that actually the colour will be just really striking and really in your face. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed it today. I hope it's given you some valuable insight into how I might approach an Emperor's Children army. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I shall see you on the next one.